Welcome to the final edition of Indians Insider. We are going to be briefly covering the events of July. I'm sorry that I did not include stats in this video, but we are going to be covering the events of July with the All-Star game, or the All-Star break, because that includes the Futures game and the AAA All-Star game as well, up to the trade deadline. Before we cover what we are going to do with the return of Corey Kluber imminent in the next episode when we take on the Baltimore Orioles. So there's very few episodes of gameplay left in the season before we enter the postseason. That's the first thing I want to say. There are only 4 more gameplay episodes that I have planned. Because we pretty much have locked the division down. We have like a 10.5 game lead at this point, and it keeps growing. So we pretty much have the division, so there's no point in showing all these late season games. We got a game against Baltimore, St. Louis, Chicago White Sox, and the Minnesota Twins. So that's what the plans are for the rest of the regular season. Let's cover the All-Star break. We also have an end of the season update too. And I'll try and get the playoffs out before I move. I'm going to have all the other episodes done before I move, but I'm not sure about the playoffs. So we'll see how that works out, and how that works out with NHL coming out in 5 days via EA Access. So meaning the 10th, it's currently the 4th, excuse me, this is the 3rd as this is uploaded, so it would be 6 days. But let's get into the events of the All-Star break and the trade deadline. The first event of the All-Star break was the AAA All-Star game, and we were represented by 3 relievers, 2 depth options, and 1 guy who we have a bright future to look toward. So Sean Armstrong and Nick Hagedorn are our 2 highest rated relievers in the farm system behind Jake Barrett. However, they're both in their late 20s at this point and do not project to be any big pieces for the Indians in the future. And Kyle Crockett, who is honestly a reliever that I've been thinking about promoting for a while. His progression has been really nice through the minor leagues. He has gone up 6 overall points this year from a 62 all the way up to a 68. And I was meaning to do a top prospect video all season, but I just never got the time to do it with my tight schedule lately. So he's one of the people that is high ranking in our farm system. If I had to rank, I'd say now that Brian Johnson is up, it would probably be DJ Peterson, Mac Owen, Kyle Crockett, and then Billy Creech. And you can take your pick of who the 5th one in that group would be. I would probably say Clint Frazier. So yeah, Kyle Crockett's one of the top guys that I'm looking forward to having up in the near future, though. So that will be interesting to see how that pans out, especially since he's a AAA All-Star. So he'll definitely be up when the rosters expand to give him a shot. But we'll see how we plan to use him going forward. We move on now to the MLB All-Star game, and the Cleveland Indians had 5 representatives. Corey Kluber would have been one of those representatives had he not injured himself, but in his place, the man who has become our ace in Corey Kluber's absence, with a 10-4 record, a 2.29 ERA, and 114 strikeouts this season, was the free agent signee Matt Latos. A big gamble by the Indians is really paying off, and they have actually not had to deal with him getting injured yet this season, which is surprising considering his injury history the past couple of seasons before he came over to Cleveland. Cody Allen, our closer, leads the MLB in saves. He has not so great numbers outside of that, but again, a couple of bad outings have really inflated his numbers. He has good underlying numbers. If he just gets his walks per 9 down, he would have a much lower ERA. So, you know, his numbers are kind of deceiving. And on the hitting side of things, Michael Brantley was the only player in the starting lineup for the All-Star game, batting second, although he did hit a little bit of a cold streak. He got that average all the way down in the 260s right now, but we're hoping that he can turn it around in the second half of the season. He's already kind of started to make a little bit of a comeback at this point, as we are a little bit into the second half at this point. The other hitters on the bench for the Cleveland Indians: Carlos Santana, who has probably been the Indians' best player this year, not just hitter, but he has provided Gold Glove caliber defense up to this point in the season and been a very good run producer. I'd say he's probably the Indians' best hitter at this point. He's currently leading the team in OPS, just ahead of Brandon Moss and Michael Brantley. And they have been our really 3 big productive hitters this year, but I'd say that Santana's been the most productive of them all. So I would have honestly argued for him to be the Indians' starter, but, you know, maybe the other first baseman in the starting lineup had a better case to make for starting than Carlos Santana. And finally, the man currently hitting 240, but he's actually been hitting very well recently, Ben Revere, who is starting to turn around his very rough start to the season, although he has not slowed down in the base stealing department despite his inability to get on base to begin with. So you gotta expect that his stolen bases will actually go up now that he's starting to get on base again, but we'll see how the rest of the season pans out for Ben Revere. Currently leading MLB in stolen bases, but not really impressive anywhere else to be worthy of an all-star nomination. So the next thing to get into will be what happened at the Futures game. 3 Indians were at the Futures game. We're going to list them in the order that they were in the batting order. Leading off was Clint Frazier, the MLB's next 5-tool player. He's projected to be in the league within the next couple seasons. He's got great contact skills, excellent fielder, and he's a big base running threat, along with the natural power that you see from him as a right-handed bat. And that's going to be a good mix into the system because currently all three of our outfielders are left-handed, excuse me. Michael Brantley is left-handed. David Murphy is right-handed, or left-handed, excuse me, although he's been platooning with Stephen Piscotty recently. And Ben Revere is left-handed. And then on the infield, we got Jason Kipnis, who's left-handed. So there's a lot of left-handed bats in the lineup, and you want to try and balance it righty-lefty. So, you know, our recent bats, you know, like Stephen Piscotty that we traded for, DJ Peterson that we traded for, Clint Frazier, who's in our system, and Mac Owen that we drafted are all right-handed bats. So we've really been trying to prioritize getting some more right-handed bats in our lineup to counterbalance the lefties. Even though we do have, you know, Carl Santana switch hits, Yan Gomes is a right-handed hitter, but that's one, you know, really good right-handed hitter in your lineup. Our DH is also left-handed, so, you know, Clint Frazier's a good power hitter and, you know, a good all-around player. I don't want to, you know, call him Mike Trout or anything, but he does have a lot of the stats that are kind of, he has that stat balance that's kind of the same as Mike Trout, where he's not really outstanding in any of these categories, but he does everything well. Obviously, Mike Trout does everything well, but to a much better extent. But that's the same kind of player that I'm comparing him. Obviously not of the same caliber, but still, same kind of player. The cleanup man for the U.S. Futures game team was power hitter DJ Peterson, who has not made a whole lot of progress in the minor leagues this year. He's only gone up 1 overall point since we traded for him, but he is going to be a huge power hitter in the middle of our order for years to come, as the third base spot will be solidified. You know, Giovanni Urshela is good over there, but he would be better off in more of a utility role, as he can only hit from one side of the plate, and it's his own side of the plate. He should really learn to hit left-handers, considering he is a right-handed batter, and he's not the greatest fielder in the world, at least in this game. So, you know, DJ Peterson, if he continues to actually make progress, which he has not been doing a great job at this year, he would have a spot on the hot corner for at least 5 or 6 years once he finally comes up for the Indians. Again, a right-handed bat, something that this lineup would really benefit from having. And the number 8 hitter, and maybe perhaps a surprising Futures game participant, Max Pentecost, catcher acquired from the Toronto Blue Jays when we made the off-season trade of Bud Norris after acquiring him in the DJ Peterson deal. We flipped him to Toronto for Max Pentecost. He's never going to be a good hitter, I don't think, but he is going to be an excellent fielding catcher, and he has some pretty deceptive speed for a catcher. So his future outlook is not very high, but he could be a serviceable backup catcher or even a starting catcher if, you know, Yan Gomes declines rapidly. So, you know, it's always nice to have some depth in the minors, and, you know, Max Pentecost never going to be a great hitter, but he is going to be an excellent catcher from the looks of it if his development path continues the way it has. And not much unlike last season when the Indians were in excellent position at this point. They were very quiet on the trade market at the non-waiver trade deadline. The only thing they did was they acquired left-hander Sean Marshall to serve as the second right-hander left-hander, excuse me, in the bullpen, along with Oliver Perez, and they traded Mark Repchinski in the process. A pending free agent was not going to bring him back. He had really bad numbers this year. His whip was like 1.8, and his ERA was in the 6s. So he was definitely not a player that I planned to sign on any sort of longer contract. And we only gave up, you know, Ronnie Rodriguez is not a very highly touted prospect in our system anyway. We got a very deep farm system, and Luis Mateo is already 26, and he's only a 65 overall. so his chance of impacting the major leagues at any point really is questionable, but especially this season when this team is meant to, you know, make it to the World Series after coming so close last year. That's really a really important thing for us to try and solidify any spots of weakness. But other than, you know, that wanting a second lefty in the bullpen, upon the return of Corey Kluber, we really don't have any weaknesses. So that's the final thing I want to address. Corey Kluber comes off the DL, so here's what's going to happen. Brian Johnson is going to skip his next start, and Corey Kluber will be starting in his place against the Baltimore Orioles. We want to keep Brian Johnson's innings down if possible. We're going to skip a couple starts down the stretch too, as Danny Salazar is going to stay on the MLB roster, and Zach McAllister is going to be designated for an assignment, as you will see right here. McAllister just really never got it going coming off of that torn labrum this season, and so Danny Salazar is going to take over that role. He fits that role well, as he has a high K rate and he struggled with walks this year, but we'll see how it pans out. Next game is going to be against the Baltimore Orioles. It'll be Corey Kluber's return, so stay tuned for that. Thank you guys for watching this edition of Indians Insider. See you for the next edition of Indians Baseball.